Your life is being shaped right now, not by your circumstances, not by other people, not by luck, but by your thoughts. Every action you take, every emotion you feel, every decision you make begins in the mind. And if your thoughts are undisciplined, your life will be undisciplined. If your thoughts are chaotic, your life will become chaotic. This is the truth most people never face. A man who cannot control his thoughts cannot control his destiny, because thoughts are never harmless. They become words. Words become actions. Actions become habits. And habits become your life. That is why controlling your thoughts is not a small skill. It is the foundation of everything. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that external events were never the true problem. The true problem was the meaning the mind attached to them. Two people can face the same challenge. One becomes stronger. The other becomes bitter. Why? Because of thought. One mind says, "This will break me." The other says, "This will teach me." The situation is the same, but the outcome is different. Because thoughts create perception, and perception creates reality. Now understand this. Most people live as prisoners of the mind. They believe every fear. They obey every impulse. They react to every emotion. A negative thought enters, and they accept it as truth. "I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Nothing will ever change." And because they repeat these thoughts, they begin to live them. That is the hidden danger. Because when you fail to control your thoughts begin to control you. And once that happens, you stop living intentionally. You live reactively. You wake up in doubt. You move in fear. You make decisions based on emotion. And that cycle silently shapes your entire life. Now here is where power begins. The moment you realize that not every thought deserves your obedience, that realization changes everything. Because now you can pause. You can observe your mind instead of being ruled by it. You can question the fear. You can reject the lie. You can choose a better thought. And in that moment, you reclaim power. That is what discipline truly is. Not forcing the body, but leading the mind. And once you learn that, you stop becoming a victim of internal chaos. But here is where it becomes even deeper. Because the greatest battle is not against the world. It is against the thoughts you secretly believe. Continue, and I'll take you to the next phase of these lessons. Why the thoughts you secretly believe are controlling your entire life, and how to break free. The thoughts that control your life are not always loud. They are quiet, subtle, repeated, unquestioned. They don't shout for attention. They whisper in the background. And because they are familiar, you believe them. "I'm not ready yet. I'll start later. I don't have what it takes." These thoughts don't feel like lies. They feel like truth. And that is what makes them dangerous. Because once a thought feels true, you stop questioning it. You accept it. And what you accept, you act on. This is how your life gets shaped without your awareness. Not by one big decision, but by small thoughts repeated daily. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that the mind is not always a source of truth. It is often a source of distortion. What you think is not always what is real. But if you never challenge your thoughts, they become your reality. Now here's the deeper problem. Most people don't observe their thoughts. They identify with them. If a thought says, "You're not good enough," they don't question it. They become it. If a thought says, "You should avoid this," they obey it, even when it limits their growth. And over time, this creates a pattern. You start avoiding challenges. You start delaying action. You start living below your potential. Not because you lack ability, but because you believe limiting thoughts. And belief creates behavior. Now imagine something different. A man who hears a negative thought, but does not accept it immediately. He pauses. He questions it. He asks, "Is this true? Or is this fear speaking? Is this helping me or holding me back?" That moment of questioning breaks the cycle, because now the thought no longer controls him. He controls the response. And that response changes everything. Because once you stop blindly believing your thoughts, you begin to filter them. You keep what strengthens you. You reject what weakens you. And over time, your mind becomes sharper, clearer, more disciplined. Now here's the truth most people never realize. You don't need to control every thought. You need to control which thoughts you accept, because thoughts will always appear. But not all of them deserve your attention, and definitely not all of them deserve your belief. This is where honesty comes in, because you must be honest enough to admit some of your thoughts are not truth. They are fear, insecurity, or conditioning. And until you face that honestly, you will keep repeating the same patterns. But once you do, you begin to separate yourself from the noise. You stop reacting automatically. You start choosing intentionally. And that is where real mental discipline begins. But here's where most people still struggle. Because even when they recognize negative thoughts, they don't know how to stop acting on them. And that leads to the next level of control. I'll take you to the next lesson. Why awareness alone is not enough, and how to build real discipline over your thoughts. Awareness feels powerful, but on its own, it changes nothing. You can recognize a negative thought. You can even understand where it comes from, and still obey it. That's the trap most people fall into. They become aware, but they don't become disciplined. They notice the fear, but still avoid action. They recognize the doubt, but still delay progress. And slowly, they mistake understanding for control. But Machiavellian thinking and the Stoics would both agree on one thing. Knowing is not power. Execution is. Because your life does not change based on what you understand. It changes based on what you do despite what you feel. Now here's the deeper truth. Your mind will always suggest comfort. It will tell you to rest when you should work. It will tell you to avoid when you should confront. It will tell you to delay when you should act. Not because your mind is your enemy, but because it is designed to protect you from discomfort. And growth always requires discomfort. So if you follow your thoughts blindly, you will always choose the easier path. And the easier path leads to a harder life. Now imagine a different approach. A man who hears the thought, "I don't feel like doing this," and does it anyway. A man who feels fear and still moves forward. A man who feels doubt but continues to act. That man becomes dangerous because he is no longer controlled by internal resistance. He acts based on decision, not emotion. And that is discipline. Not forcing yourself once, but repeatedly choosing action over comfort. The Stoics practiced this daily. They didn't wait to feel ready. They trained themselves to act regardless of mood, because mood is unstable. But discipline creates consistency. Now here's where it becomes real. You don't build discipline by thinking about it. You build it by doing what your mind resists. Every time you act despite resistance, you weaken the control your thoughts have over you. Every time you choose action over comfort, you strengthen your authority over your mind. And over time, that authority becomes natural. Now you don't hesitate as much. You don't delay as often. You don't negotiate with yourself endlessly. You decide, and you act. That is power. Not loud, not visible, but internal. And once you reach that level, your life begins to change rapidly. Because you are no longer waiting for the perfect mindset. You are creating results through disciplined action. But here's where it goes even deeper. Because discipline without honesty will eventually collapse. And most people ignore this part completely. Why honesty with yourself is the foundation of true discipline, and why most people avoid it. Discipline without honesty doesn't last. It looks strong at first, structured, focused, but underneath, it's fragile. Because if you are not honest with yourself, you will always find a way to escape. You will say you're working hard, but you know you're distracted. You will say you're trying your best, but you know you're avoiding what matters. You will say you're consistent, but you know you only act when it feels convenient. And that quiet dishonesty destroys discipline, not immediately, but over time. Because discipline requires alignment. What you say, what you think, and what you do must match. And if they don't, you create internal conflict. The Stoics understood this clearly. A man who lies to himself cannot lead himself, because leadership begins internally. If you cannot be honest about your weaknesses, you cannot correct them. If you cannot admit your excuses, you will continue to hide behind them. If you cannot face your reality, you will never change it. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people avoid honesty because it is painful. It forces you to confront your laziness, your inconsistency, your lack of discipline, and that confrontation feels heavy. So instead of facing it, they justify it. They blame circumstances. They blame time. They blame other people. Anything to avoid saying, "This is on me." But the moment you say that, everything shifts. Because now you take ownership. And ownership creates control. Now you're not waiting for things to change. You are the one changing them. Now imagine this. A man who looks at his life without excuses. He sees his flaws clearly. He admits where he's lacking. He accepts responsibility. That man becomes dangerous in a powerful way. Because he is no longer hiding from reality. He is confronting it directly. And once you confront reality, you can reshape it. Now here's the deeper level. Honesty is not just about admitting weakness. It's about refusing to tolerate it. Not with shame, but with discipline. You recognize the flaw, and you act to correct it. You don't ignore it. You don't justify it. You don't delay it. You face it. And that consistent honesty builds trust within yourself. Because now your actions match your awareness. And that alignment creates strength. Now understand this. A disciplined mind without honesty will always break under pressure. But a mind that is both disciplined and honest becomes unshakable because it is grounded in truth, not illusion. And once you reach that level, your thoughts no longer control you. You control them. But there is still one final level. Because controlling your thoughts is not just about discipline and honesty. It is about something deeper, something most people never fully achieve. Continue, and I'll take you to the final phase. What happens when you fully control your mind? The transformation most people never reach. When you fully control your mind, life becomes quieter, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The noise that once distracted you no longer has power. The doubts that once stopped you no longer define you. The emotions that once controlled you no longer lead you. And in that silence, something powerful emerges. Clarity. You see things as they are, not as your fears distort them. You act based on purpose, not on impulse. You move with intention, not reaction. This is the transformation most people never reach. Because it requires something rare. Consistent discipline, relentless honesty, unwavering control. And most people stop before they get there. They want results, but avoid the process. They want clarity, but avoid confronting their own thoughts. They want control, but still obey every emotion. And that contradiction keeps them stuck. But when you commit fully, everything changes. You wake up with direction. You act without hesitation. You finish what you start, not because it feels easy, but because you've trained your mind to follow your decisions. And that creates freedom. Not the kind of freedom people imagine, but real freedom. Freedom from distraction. Freedom from overthinking. Freedom from emotional instability. Because now, you are in control. The Stoics valued this above everything. A man who controls his mind, controls his life. And once you reach that level, you become difficult to break, difficult to distract, difficult to influence. Because your foundation is internal, not dependent on external validation, not shaken by temporary emotions, not influenced by passing thoughts. You become steady, focused, unshakable. Now here is the final truth. Controlling your thoughts is not about perfection. It is about direction. Every day, you choose what you think. Every day, you choose what you believe. Every day, you choose how you act. And those choices shape your entire life. Not instantly, but inevitably. So the question is not, can you control your thoughts? The question is, will you take responsibility for them? Because the moment you do, everything begins to change. If this made you think differently, don't stop here, because most people will hear this and continue living the same way. But you don't have to. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to the channel for more discipline, self-mastery, and powerful mindset content. Because the man who controls his thoughts controls his future.